Good morning. World Parkinson's Day just went past us, and as always, there has been a lot of focus on the core physical symptoms of the condition. I thought I should take this opportunity in 2022 to do two things. The first, talk about James Parkinson and his descriptions of Parkinson's disease. The second, pay some attention to the non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease, which often get ignored. James Parkinson was an English physician who lived from 1755 to 1824. In fact, he was an English surgeon, and he is best known for his essay on a shaking palsy, describing a condition he called paralysis agitans, which was later renamed Parkinson's disease by the famous French neurologist Charcot. In his description, he says the disease respecting which the inquiry is made is of a nature highly afflictive, notwithstanding which it has not yet obtained a place in the classification of nosologists. And when he was writing this, clearly Parkinson's disease was an unrecognized entity. He also said it's of a long duration, and the symptoms that occur later are quite different from those that mark the commencement, therefore requiring that the patient is observed over a period of time by the physician. A tall order in an era where people seek multiple opinions from different specialists and seldom follow up with one doctor. But this is what Parkinson's disease was described as by James Parkinson. He also said that there is an involuntary, tremulous motion with lessened motor power in parts not in action, and even when supported, with a propensity to bend the trunk forwards and to pass from a walking to a running pace, the senses and intellects being uninjured. So let's just consider that when people are walking with Parkinson's disease, they have this tendency to lean forward as if they are chasing their center of gravity. And that is what makes a person with Parkinson's disease fall forwards. And this was what James Parkinson was describing. He also pointed out that in the early stages, so slight and nearly imperceptible are the first inroads, and so slow is the progress that the patient can form any recollection of the precise period of commencement. In other words, people don't realize when the disease creeps upon them. And creep is what it does. It brings forward symptoms little by little. And if you ask someone, when did it start? They are seldom sure about a precise moment when it started. And over time, for a person with Parkinson, he says, walking becomes a task which cannot be performed without considerable attention. The legs are not raised to that height or with that promptitude that the will directs, so that utmost care is necessary. And what he's talking about is that people with Parkinson's disease have an almost magnetic gait, as if the feet are being held on to the ground. They find it difficult to lift their feet and move forward in that smooth, precise motion that all of us are used to seeing. This, in fact, is described as the rhythm or cadence of gait, and that is what is very difficult or disturbed in a person with Parkinson's disease. So much for the physical symptoms of Parkinson's disease. There are some unique other symptoms that come upon the person. The speech becomes greatly affected over time for many people. It can become very low in tone, what's called hypophonia. It can become difficult to understand because the words tend to slur upon each other, and speech can become imperceptible. And this too was described by James Parkinson. Now, as I pointed out when we started talking today, on World Parkinson's Day, while these motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease receive a lot of attention, and a lot of the treatments and the cures that we talk about are focused on those, we must not forget that people with Parkinson's disease have a range of what we would call non-motor symptoms. And let me describe some of these. The first are symptoms to do with mood and affect. Patients with Parkinson's disease often have depression and anxiety, and sometimes these symptoms can precede the motor symptoms by months, even years. So we've had patients who come to us feeling depressed, feeling anxious as they're getting older for reasons that they don't understand. And as we watch the person, over time, they then develop the physical symptoms of Parkinson's disease. So these are some of the early non-motor symptoms. The other non-motor symptoms that we see in people with Parkinson's disease include mood swings, mental agitation, aggression, even violence in some patients. And people can have emotional discontrol, a tendency to laugh and cry uncontrollably, and quite the opposite, a tendency to develop what we call apathy or abulia. Now, this is the most interesting condition which a great Parkinson's disease expert, Professor C.D. Marsden, developed or described using what he called the golf test. He talked about a patient who retired to live opposite a golf course so that he could play golf regularly. This gentleman went on to develop Parkinson's disease. He would sit on his porch, he would watch the golf course, he would watch other people play, but he could never get himself to get up and go and play the game himself. And this he called abulia, or lack of will to do something. And that lack of will is completely understandable because Parkinson's disease affects a part of the brain called the basal ganglia, which is intimately connected to the frontal lobe. Parkinson's disease is a condition in which dopamine, which is our happiness chemical, our motivation chemical, is affected. So you can understand why people with Parkinson's disease develop apathy or abulia. A common complaint I have from families is he sits in front of the TV, the remote's in his hand, he can't even bother to change the channel. And this is something that people with Parkinson's disease have. This is something that caregivers get very distressed about and wonder why they are like that. And the reasons lie obviously in the brain. The other problem that people with Parkinson's disease have is various forms of cognitive impairment. When it is severe, it goes on to a form of dementia. But in milder forms, forgetfulness, difficulty paying attention, a tendency to constantly misplace things, a tendency to have recent memory difficulties, and very often a tendency to struggle to execute. So to think, plan, and carry out even simple tasks is something that people with Parkinson's disease struggle with as time goes by. People with Parkinson's disease can also have hallucinations and associated delusions. Hallucinations in Parkinson's disease are often very interesting. They are small people, small objects, creepy crawlies, often witnessed by the person, and they often make the person paranoid and very suspicious of what's going on. So they are complex visual hallucinations. I had this patient once who would keep falling, and we never understood why till we asked him what he was seeing. And he said he sees little children playing football and he goes to kick the ball, and that's how he falls. And it's so real for the person with Parkinson's disease that they are seeing someone play football. I've had a lady recently, an elderly lady, falling for the same reason, that she sees children playing and she tries to play with them and she loses balance and falls. So complex visual hallucinations are part of Parkinson's disease. Sometimes they are accompanied by dementia, and sometimes the combination is something called Lewy body disorder or Lewy body dementia. Disorders of smell and inability to smell things well are part and parcel of many neurodegenerative disorders, including Parkinson's disease. And when you can't smell well, you can't taste well either. It's quite distressing for the person because the food is no longer tasty. Another set of symptoms that we need to think about as non-motor in Parkinson's disease are pain and sensory symptoms. Many patients with Parkinson's disease, almost 70%, report pain, chronic pain-related issues. And they also have difficulties in perceiving sensation like touch, pain, temperature, and vibration. As you can imagine, this is quite disabling for the person with Parkinson's disease, and addressing pain is therefore a very, very important part of helping a person with Parkinson's disease. Addressing also sensory impairment is extremely important. The other non-motor symptom of great significance is problems with sleep. And here I'd like to put focus on one particular problem, what's called REM sleep behavior disorder, rapid eye movement sleep behavior disorder. In this condition, patients are almost living a dream, and therefore they act out their dreams. There are movements, there is shouting, there can be an attempt to leave the bed, there can even be some degree of violence or aggression that the person demonstrates to others in the room with him or her. REM sleep behavior disorder is very distressing for the family, and it's a problem in Parkinson's disease that needs focus. It also needs our attention and help. And of course, it can be managed both with medication and with therapy. I now come to an important set of symptoms, what we call autonomic dysfunction. Autonomic nervous system is the part of our nervous system that is silent. It is what controls our internal body balance. It controls our heart rate, it controls our blood pressure, it controls our energy regulation, and many other things. People with Parkinson's disease do have problems with autonomic regulation because the autonomic nervous system degenerates. And if you think about it, the human species was never meant to stand on two legs. We were apes on four legs. When man decided to stand in evolution, nature had to create a mechanism whereby all the blood did not follow its way to gravity to your feet, and there was a regulation of blood flow that continued. And this is thanks to the autonomic nervous system, which uses a series of nerve receptors and hormones and valves to accomplish this. In some people, this system becomes dysfunctional, and in many people with Parkinson's disease, this system can become dysfunctional. So they have postural changes in blood pressure, they have changes in heart rate, they have changes in body temperature, they have problems with digestion, they have problems with urinary function, problems with sexual function, and a host of other issues that we call autonomic. And this results in a plethora of systemic complaints that can affect many body parts. So people have vertigo and end up seeing an ENT doctor. People have cardiac issues for which they go to the cardiologist. They have breathing difficulties for which they see a respiratory physician. They have tummy troubles, either constipation or irritable bowels, for which they see the gastroenterologist. They have, as I pointed out, urinary and sexual symptoms, for which they see a genito-urinary doctor. And they have orthopedic and rheumatological problems, bones, joints, musculoskeletal system, and very often skin symptoms, which include dryness of skin or patchy excessive sweating or even pigmentation. And these symptoms, therefore, can be extremely troublesome for the person with Parkinson's disease. So these non-motor symptoms are often prevalent with advancing disease, but as I have pointed out, some of these, like depression, can actually precede the diagnosis of Parkinson's disease, which is made with the three core symptoms: tremors, stiffness, and slowness, what is called tremors, rigidity, and bradykinesia. So I'd like to place a lot of attention today on these troublesome non-motor symptoms which are often neglected. Now, what can we do for people with non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease? And this is where what we do at Boothi Clinic really comes into being. We have an approach that is multidisciplinary, multi-component, and holistic. Physical and occupational therapists can help you with restoring and maintaining optimum mobility, and that is extremely important for the person with Parkinson's disease. Our speech therapists work on clarity of speech and they work on swallowing difficulties, and these are problems, as I pointed out, that people with Parkinson's disease have. Our psychologists can improve mood, reduce anxiety, enhance cognition, enhance activities of daily life, and improve quality of life, all of which are critical for people with Parkinson's disease in terms of their outcome. Our holistic physicians can help improve sleep, appetite, digestion, and they can help relieve a number of troublesome symptoms that we've been talking about, which are the non-motor symptoms. And last and certainly not least, our neuromodulation experts have a range of tools: repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation and transcranial direct current stimulation, TMS and TDCS in particular, that can help the motor symptoms. They can help the tremors, they can help the spasticity, they can help the slowness, but they can also help anxiety, they can also help cognition, they can also help mood, and they can help speech and swallowing. So in a sense, this combination of treatments delivered in a programmed manner as a rehabilitation process to patients with Parkinson's disease addresses not just the motor but the non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's disease. And we need to go beyond medication in order to help the person with Parkinson's disease tackle both motor and non-motor symptoms and adding thereby life to their years. So let's, on World Parkinson's Day this year, let's take a pledge that we will work in a more comprehensive and holistic way to offer care for Parkinson's disease. Thank you.